Tiana's Bayou Adventure premiered on June 28th of 2024, and it's still breaking down almost every single day. But the media is not blaming Disney Imagineering. Media is blaming the failure of Tiana's Bayou Adventure on Christians. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is not just my Wookiee co-pilot, VashSky, but also the sage, well, maybe I shouldn't call Vash the Wookiee, since we do have a fabricated American here with us. He is more furry. Marvin, the movie monster, is here to join us.
Hello, my friends. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Today, in fact, we are reading one of your articles out of That Park Place, and one of my favorites so far. Media blames the failure of Tiana's Bayou Adventure on Christians. You guys can go check this out in its entirety, but I just had to have Marvin on the show to talk about this one.
It's one of those headlines that I was writing the headline, and I was like, man, I can't believe I have to write this headline.
Right. Sometimes you jazz it up to make sure that people understand the sensational aspect of it, and sometimes they just write themselves in a way that you would not be telling the truth if you took the sensationalism out of it. But here we go. With Tiana's Bayou Adventure failing to delight the majority of Disney fans, and really failing to even function at all during long stretches of just about every day since officially opening to the public, many have been left wondering what went wrong. Why is this ride, a replacement for one of the most beloved rides of all time in Splash Mountain, such a letdown for so many? Well, The Hill's Mark Pinsky thinks he knows the answer. By the way, The Hill, is that some blog?
I'm not even 100% sure.
No, it's a legit publication.
Pretty prestigious.
I'm not sure anymore is what I'm saying.
Oh, I see.
At one time I would have said no, but good Lord, after reading this article.
But here we are. Is it the fact that the attraction doesn't work? Is it the racist undertones in the happy-go-lucky depiction of the Avery Island salt mines and its history of abuse and slave labor? By the way, for those of you who don't understand, we're not talking about the old attraction, Splash Mountain, when we say Avery Island salt mines and history of abuse and involuntary work here. That is the new attraction, which is very specifically based on we're going to get in trouble because they're going to see the mix of words here. A plantation that was run by people who did not pay the people who worked for them. And maybe they didn't have any choice in whether they worked there. And it was working for a very long time. Is it the lackluster music or the fact that an attraction teeming with more than 70 animatronic critters has been turned into an experience with less than 50, in reality, less than 20 actual animatronics? I'm going to say 15 by my count. And that is counting the human animatronics that have very basic motion, like Eudora, what is her name? And also Charlotte LaBeouf. Anyways, is it all that? And here it is. Man, I dig your writing style here, Marvin. Nope.
Thank you.
It's Christians, specifically white Christians. Oh my. In his article titled Tiana's Bayou Adventure, the racial and religious politics of Disney's new theme park ride, Pinsky praises Disney's decision to replace Splash Mountain, an attraction based on a film that he, a very, very white man, claims is deeply offensive to many African Americans. I guess he must have asked everyone. He then goes on to say that Song of the South presented an idealized, historically inaccurate portrayal of African Americans in the region before and after the Civil War.
I believe Jonas, they deputized him at the cookout.
Thank you. Hopefully they didn't hand him a pass here. Before adding, it was also criticized for its cultural appropriation. The white 19th century author Joel Chandler Harris first heard many of the black folk tales about Brer Rabbit that informed his novel in a Georgia plantation cabin that housed enslaved people. I'm just going to point out the era at this point. Joel Chandler Harris, first of all, pointing out stories that he was told as a child. And would they have published these stories if they were said by a slave? I don't think so. Someone would have gotten credit for this. It would have taken an incredibly progressive editor at the time to publish a story by a black man in the South at that point. Anyways, let's move on. Pinsky then takes a break from virtue signaling to actually get to his point. Discussion of the ride's new incarnation has so far justly focused on the dramatic racial symbolism for Disney theme parks. He said, "Oh my, oh
Getting
my."
a little more in there. Getting just a little more in there after he took a break.
He said getting a little more virtue signaling in there for good measure. He also ignores that most of the discussion surrounding this attraction was centered on the fact that it doesn't work for long stretches of each day. While it is the first Disney theme park ride based on an African American character, is it? Is it really? It may also represent a retrospective effort to sanitize the princess and the frog. Huh. I'm going to ask for a fact check on that one. Vash? Is it the first Disney attraction that's based on an African American character?
It might be technically, but obviously African American characters have been prominently featured in Walt Disney attractions as early as the 1980s with the American Adventure attraction. So, I mean, I suppose you can say, well, this is the first one based on this character.
I don't think so. The Hall of Presidents was themed after Barack Obama for 8 years.
Yes, that's very true.
Very true.
Or the fact that they generally don't theme these attractions after a specific character. Anyways,
That's very true.
Also, the Song of the South, they removed Uncle Remus from the ride, so it would have been based around an African American character if they had not replaced it with. I'm going to say that Brer Frog was the stand-in for Uncle Remus.
Definitely.
Yep. Yes, you read that right. We're sanitizing the Princess and the Frog. How, might you ask? Well, let's ask Mark. Not content with erasing racism from its theme parks, Disney has apparently sought to use its magic to make the film's positive but controversial rendering of voodoo in The Princess and the Frog disappear. Was it controversial? Anyways, Pinsky said, literally out of sight, in typical Disney fashion, the company has virtually eliminated the film's voodoo portrayal, which offended some evangelical Christian theater goers. In fact, the dark voodoo depiction central to the plot of The Princess and the Frog appears almost nowhere on the 10-minute ride. I'm going to say it in fact appears nowhere on this ride in any way.
Nowhere at
This
all.
is such a bad take on his part. I'm going to say a bad faith take on his part. Marvin, you know where you're going with this. This is something that's come up, and there have been people who hate that park place specifically, not to get too much into the meta narrative of all of this, that want to say that Christians have a problem with Dr. Facilier being voodoo in Princess and the Frog, or the fact that Mama Odie is on this attraction. Disney, in fact, removed some of that voodoo symbolism for Mama Odie here. Vash, do you want to talk more about that?
Yes, they now depict her not as a voodoo priestess, as how she was depicted in the Princess and the Frog movie, but now they refer to as a Bayou fairy godmother in promotional materials and press packets that they produced for this piece of work. They specifically are omitting voodoo or any voodoo symbology, and it wasn't so much because of its offense towards Christians or Christianity. I believe it was Carmen Smith believing that voodoo, or the representation of voodoo, is inauthentic to the culture of New Orleans and to Black people in this specific region. So I think that was
100%.
more of the conceit there.
Yeah, it is a matter of they decided that it was offensive. Now, I did some research to see if Christians were actually offended by this when the movie came out. I found quite a few articles and posts on message boards and stuff like that where people were actually voicing concerns about the depiction of voodoo in the movie. So I didn't want to say that there wasn't any. But the point that I do try to make in this article is that if you look at the things that the Walt Disney Company has done in the last few years, this is not the actions that a company takes when they are deeply concerned with offending the sensibility of conservative Christians. And I'm not saying for good or ill, but it's just factually, like logically wrong.
Right.
Like it makes no sense logically.
Well, I'll also point out here, first of all, Dr. Facilier inextricably linked to voodoo. So, and most of the people that I've in my circles would not have been offended and are actually asking, well, why isn't he on the ride? So, putting this on Christians is fascinating. Also, Hunchback of Notre Dame, which maybe Disney shouldn't have touched, except for the fact that the music is amazing and is yet another addition to the Disney Renaissance that may not have been the biggest seller for the Walt Disney Company. Frollo in that movie is very, very clearly Christian and using his ideology in an evil way. But
and also Jonas, in the Broadway show that was made of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, that Frollo is no longer a judge; he is a full-on priest. He's the Archdeacon of Notre Dame in the musical that Disney did produce.
Interesting.
So, and I believe that was what Frollo was originally intended to be in the movie as well, if I had to venture a guess, and they cut it because of those reasons. But now they don't care.
and theological problems of Hunchback of Notre Dame notwithstanding, Disney has shown in the past they've been perfectly willing to make a villain out of a religion, and that most people, including most of the Christians that I hung out with at the time that movie came out, were willing to say that this is the story. It is not that you are trying to say that Christians are evil, because there are positive depictions of Christianity in the film itself, despite the main villain obviously being a hypocrite by most people's standards. So
you look at what happens in that movie, you see the fact that like he's about to unalive a child, and he stops because he looks at Notre Dame and he sees the statues looking down on him, and he feels the presence of God in that moment, and then says to the priest, "What must I do?"
Right.
So,
And it's obvious. Oh, what is his name? I forget the name of the head of the Feast of Fools. That character.
Clopin.
Yeah, Clopin appealing to his Christianity to make him not do this evil thing. So, they could do this with nuance, but they choose not to. And whatever, they instead take a religion, like if we're calling voodoo a religion, or this concept of magic, and they are instead turning it into something more like, well, it's like the Force or something like this. This Mama Odie has generic magic power. If the fairy godmother from Cinderella instead had generic Christian magic powers, I think we would all find that very offensive as Christians. I'm not trying to speak for anyone else on this panel when I say this. I just think that this is Disney falling all over themselves for something that they probably need to just let it go, accept that some things exist, and move on here. There will always be someone offended at every single thing that goes into a movie.
I also make the point later on in the article, Jonas, that Disney has no problem with, doing a remake of Hercules, the live action remake of Hercules coming up in the future, the Thor movies. I mean, there are still people who practice the Norse pagan and Greek pagan faiths. Like, those are still gods that people worship somewhere in this world. So it's clearly not that Disney has some problem with portraying religion. That to say that is just obtuse.
And this is a defense that's brought up constantly. Oh, well, we don't want to worry about offending those Christians, that the Christians are the problem. I think Christians have actually tolerated quite a bit, and they're still willing to show up. Like, as you say, for Hercules, I think there are a lot of Christians who don't have a problem with the fact that despite the Greek god of the underworld, Hades, is depicted more like the Christian depiction of the devil instead of the Greek version of Hades, which is just some guy who happens to be in charge of the underworld. We just let it go because nobody's trying to make a statement about Christianity there. No one's trying to make a statement about voodoo with this little kids film. Maybe they've gotten so high-minded with these things that they're not willing to just, I don't know, let a story happen. Vash, you were going to say something.
Well, even if we accept Pinsky's premise that Disney didn't include voodoo for one reason or another, as it relates to Christianity, the big complaint that people have with Tiana's Bay Adventure is the lack of danger at all, is the lack of any, conflict or opposing faction in that. You could have used the trappers, right? The trappers were featured in a sequence in Princess and the Frog. It could have been something as benign as that, but no, they don't have any conflict whatsoever. They don't have any stakes or even any sense of adventure, which is very ironic given the attraction's name. So, I mean, even if you want to say that, well, we could have had a better attraction if it hadn't been for those dang Christians, well, not even necessarily, because it was well within Disney's capacity to deliver a better attraction. They simply failed to do so. So the whole premise
that's a great idea right there. I mean, you could have incorporated Mama Odie that much sooner, turn everybody into frogs right at the start, have the trappers in there. And obviously, Mama Odie's a little bit off a rocker. That's part of the fun of the character. So have her saying, oh, well, it was better when you were a frog. So therefore, I'm just going to turn you into a frog, even as Tiana says, no. And then turning her back in. And that's what causes the plunge for some reason. Right there, man, that's even a better attraction right there, as opposed to there's some generic party that's going on, and we better get some bandmates. Hey, we've seen add them to the band.
We've been seeing them shy away from conflict for a while now. I mean, we saw it with the addition of Mickey's Royal Friendship Fair, where I waited the entire time when that thing first started. And if you remember Dream Along with Mickey, the castle show before that, everything was like, yeah, dreams are awesome. And Donald Duck was like, who cares about dreams? And then the villains show up and they're like, dreams suck. And like, they fought back against the villains until finally Donald's like, no, dreams are good. And like a lesson is learned by all. Mickey's Royal Friendship Fair boils down to like, boy, isn't friendship great? It sure is, Mickey. And that's the whole thing.
Right. You can't have that cheesiness, by the way, because Walt Disney said, yeah, I like a little bit of cheesiness in my films. And that's why so many of them were timeless. And when I say timeless, they didn't call you to the current day. And if they did call you to the current day, it was by talking about something that happened in the past. Anyways, with that being said, we probably should wrap up this video because we've got more stories that we need to cover here on That Park Place. Drop your comments in the comment section down below. I'm sure with us talking about Christians and white guilt and all of that, nobody has anything to say on this one. I'm very sure of it. So maybe we don't even need to mention that comment section down below. Like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.